Hey everybody, and welcome to Table Talk with Scott and Terry. I'm Scott.
I'm Terry.
And we had a meeting in our office due to technical glitches, but we're keeping social distancing at least 6 feet apart.
Totally.
To be safe and all that kind of stuff. And COVID-19, which this is not episode number 19. I believe this is episode number 18. Episode number 18 of Table Talk with Scott and Terry. So we try to talk about things we want you to talk around your table, and you should have plenty of time to table talk right now. Unless you're at your, even if you're alone in your house, you can Zoom with somebody. I hear a lot of people having social happy hours or electronic digital happy hours or that kind of stuff. Whatever you can to talk about the stuff. So our church has started a new series called Beauty from Ashes. It's taken from the Isaiah 61 passage where actually in the story that the children of Israel, or actually Judah, have been taken into exile. They've been taken over to Babylon. Everything's been torn apart, kind of chaotic, and they're in Babylon and they're wondering, man, will it ever get back to normal or good? And there's this great line where God says, I'm going to trade you your ashes for a crown of beauty. And so the sermon we did this week was one of my key phrases, my fears aren't fatal, my failures aren't final, that, there's always hope. Frederick Buechner says it in one of the books he writes. He says, resurrection means the worst things, never the last thing. And one thing I love about Terry is she has a great line. She says a lot. She says,
love bigger.
That's not the line. Fail.
I do say fail. Yes, that is a family. But see, that's a family
That's
saying.
A family one, fail?
The Lynch family has for years said fail.
Which is just, I messed up, but I can get better.
I messed up. Like, suck it up and face it and move on.
Which that's something we should develop more in our faith, is that ability to
laugh at ourselves.
To laugh at ourselves, but also to realize, man, the moment we're in isn't the moment we're destined to. There's always the next thing. We can always get better. There's always hope, right?
There is. I think it's interesting that you grasp onto that fail. Like, I think that really, part of that grew out of the fact that we were a military family, and that was something common in many of the commands that we were affiliated with. I mean, it was very common. If someone screwed up, you pointed it out. I mean, you made you poked them with it. And so you had to admit your failures and move on and get better.
The keys move on.
Right.
People just spin. They just dwell in their failures, right?
Right. You can't. It's hard if you're alone. And maybe that's the camaraderie of the military unit, that you knew those guys were your friends, even if they were poking you with your failure in your face. And then it helped that you got to poke them back when they failed. Maybe everybody got a turn.
That's a positive imagery right there.
No, but I mean, I don't know. I guess, it's like, I think about CrossFit. I love to go to my CrossFit, and I'm suffering. Thank God for my son, who does our workouts with me in the garage where it's miserably hot. But I miss going to CrossFit, because I always feel like you can accomplish so much more of the pain when you do it together. And so maybe that's part of embracing your fail, as it's not so painful when you're doing it with people that are lifting you up. You know what I mean? If you're in a supportive group. Because, like you said, we spiral down, and it's easier to be negative if we're all alone and that's the only voice we hear in our head.
There's some truth about being in a supportive group. I mean, if everybody's, you think about it, people constantly poking at you, saying you're not good, you're not worthy, you begin to buy into that.
Right.
You poke into groups that pull you up and bring you up. I mean, but, as followers of Jesus, he's supposed to be with us, right?
For sure. Well, and it's interesting.
For sure, totally.
Alley girl. There's a difference between someone poking you and saying, you messed up on this, and someone poking you and saying, you're a failure. And that's one thing. It's like the mistake is the fail. I'm not the fail. Whenever we say fail in my family, it's not that person is a failure.
Right.
What we did was a fail. Now let's suck less.
Yeah, we talked about this before. My family, we've never lost.
Right.
You just didn't have time. Right. It's always, we can keep doing that. But I talked about in my sermon. I talked about Peter. I said he's the poster child for people that fail miserably. Yet, if somebody screwed up, he screwed up
a bunch.
And yet, he's the leader of the early church. He's the rock that the church gets built on. But you said one of your characters is Samson.
I love the story of Samson. He is He was set aside as a child, in utero. He was identified to be set aside for God's use. He was a Nazarite, but all along, every single turn, he does things wrong. He disappoints his parents. They're like, "Can't you pick an Israelite woman?" "No, I want the Philistine." He disobeys his vows. He touches a dead carcass of a lion. He is betrayed by his wife because he gives this riddle, and she gets him to tell her the answer of the riddle, and she gives that to the people, and so then he loses the bet. So he's betrayed by his brand new wife. He kills 30 men in a rage to pay off his debt. He becomes an arsonist because his father-in-law gives his wife away, and he burns his fields down. What else? Oh, and then his friends come and murder his wife. And whether she betrayed him or not before, I don't know. I'm sincerely touched by it. They murdered his wife. So now Samson, I mean, if you don't think that his life had some ashes, like there's a whole lot of ashes that he created and that other people created on him. And then in the end, I mean, I think too often we focus on, the Delilah part is just the ending. I mean, he has this whole series of fails.
Yeah.
And then in the end, he's tempted by Delilah. He tells her that his power is in his hair not being cut. And it's after the power of the Lord leaves him that he realizes that he had the power of the Lord. You know what I mean? He needed the power of the Lord. And when he recognized the power of the Lord gave him another opportunity to be the Savior of Israel. And he defeated the Philistines again, and through God's power. So even though he had all these fails.
Yeah, I always struggle with Sam. I mean, he does have a lot of fails. I mean, there is nothing positive for me in the Samson story.
In the end, God worked at least one last repentant heart.
Yeah.
To deliver. I mean, we call him a judge, right? We call Samson a judge. He delivered them out of the bondage of the Philistines. They'd been under the bondage of the Philistines.
Well, I guess it is a good point that, he has multiple moments in his life where he is at the bottom of the pit, right?
And where he actively causes it.
Right, yeah, and it's all his fault. I mean, he really can't blame anybody else or do anything else. It's all him. But that's what I love about the Psalms. The Psalms have all those moments where they're like, I'm in the pit, and God, I cried out, and God pulls us out. And Samson put himself in the pit. Samson put himself in the ashes. He's the one. Right?
But isn't it an example of our humanity? I mean, he was tempted, and he succumbed to her temptation.
Yeah.
He disappointed his parents because he wanted what he wanted. He wanted what he wanted, and he wanted it now. Yeah. I mean.
And I do like the guy. I guess I'll go with you and say the guy didn't let his past failures stop him from God from still working in his life. I mean, it's not just, you start throwing darts at the Bible and all kind of other people who have similar stories where Paul's the same way. Paul killed Christians and then became the great missionary to spread the gospel, right?
Right.
So the woman caught in adultery.
Exactly.
Right? So God's constantly in the business of, your failures, your shortcomings.
Don't stay there.
Don't stay there. You ever have a moment where you failed in school?
Not in school.
Really? You always, look at the little goody t-shirt.
I was. I was the valedictorian in my class.
Were you really?
I was.
How many people were in class? 12?
Thanks a lot. I love you too. 385.
Oh, well done.
You're too far away to hit, man. I need something to throw.
You were valedictorian?
In high school, I was.
Good for you.
Yeah. But I'd say I have plenty of failures that God continues to deliver me from. One of the jobs I had in the Navy, I worked at the Navy boot camp, and it kind of taught you to yell at people. Part of it was yelling. I admit it, yelling, and that's one of the last jobs I had right before I had children, and it took me a long time to realize that I couldn't talk to my children like I talk to recruits.
No. You really can't.
No. Yeah. They don't respond to that. And that I reverted to yelling and getting loud as a first response to be heard and paid attention to, and that took God working through my spirit to fix. That was a big fail. That kept going. Didn't just stop. I have some funny ones. Poor Randy. He had his beautiful burgundy car, and one day I was trying to be a really nice wife and trim the hedges outside of the house, and I went and got the hedge trimmers, and as I walked past his car, they slipped and they scratched his car. That was not good.
It wasn't good.
He was very kind, though. He didn't
There you go.
but I felt bad. That was,
Yeah.
and then, but you know what? So we sold that car in like less than a year, because then it was scratched. He got a new one.
Excuse to get a new one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I unfortunately, not like you. I have lots of. I don't know if it's just hard for me to say I've had moments where I've failed. I have moments where I have screwed up.
Right.
I have moments where I have fallen short. I have moments that I'm embarrassed about looking back now. But just the where I'm at, God has worked in me and through me to get me to this point. I mean, God never gives up on us, right? And so, yes, it felt like a failure. Yes, there are things that didn't go well. Yes.
He always provided a way of escape that you could handle it.
Yeah.
That's that 1 Corinthians verse.
So I guess with God, I just whenever, that Romans passage, we're more than conquerors through Him who loved us. That there's nothing I can do to screw it up enough that God's like, hey, I'm done with you. So if God's not done with me, if God's still working in me and through me, then...
So how do we get that voice to stay running that track, to be on repeat in our head? You know what I mean? To overcome the, wow, I'm a screw-up. I mean, so that's the voice we hear. Yeah,
that's the voice we listen to a lot. I love that. Ties into, my favorite, I love Genesis a lot, and that story in Genesis about Adam and Eve, and they ate the fruit, and then God asked the question, who told you? Right. Adam's naked, and he said, I was naked, I was afraid, and God's like, who told you? And I always, what voices do we listen to?
Exactly.
And so part of it is, how do we train ourselves to listen to God's voice? God who says you're fearfully and wonderfully made, you're a beautiful creation. God who, Samson, total screw up. Peter, total screw up. I love our youth director Micah's video today. He started going through all the people in the Bible who have screwed up, and it's a long list. I mean, Noah.
All of them.
Noah, we forget Noah saved humanity on the ark, but then got drunk and passed out butt naked in his front yard. I mean, that's just not. Exactly. That's not a winner moment, right? I'm so proud, and yet God takes all that. Why can't we hear God's voice?
Why can't we give ourselves some grace?
Yeah.
But, and then at the same time, so I'm thinking, as you're talking about this, I'm thinking, okay, so it's important that we build some confidence, but not become arrogant. Like, where's the line between having confidence that, well, I didn't mean for that to happen? So is it our intent? Do we look back on our intent? If we didn't mean for the bad things to happen, then, it's not a free pass. We have to be working on improving.
True. I hate the bumper sticker that says Christians aren't perfect, just forgiven. That's not a license for you to drive like an idiot.
No.
Right? There are some things we need to be doing. Samson should have been working on.
He should have cared more about his position and his calling. Yeah, he clearly disregarded God's calling in his life until the very end, when he realized that the power had been taken from him.
So he only realized when he was missing out.
I think so. I think he was pretty arrogant along the way.
Well, yeah, I'll agree. Samson was pretty arrogant.
I think it would probably made him. He was pretty powerful. You could feel the strength, and his body responded. He could tear the lion apart. He took the jawbone and he killed 1,000 people. He probably was pretty fearless, like the SEALs and stuff. Pretty fearless.
You mean the Navy SEAls, not the...
Right. Not those ones, right.
Right, all right.
Fearless.
Well, that's probably why I like Peter better than Samson as far as the poster child for failure, because, I think Peter beat himself up. I think Peter, that's why in John's Gospel, in the end, after the resurrection, Peter's back fishing again. He's back, he's like, I'm just done. How can I come back from this? Mm-hmm. And Jesus shows back up and goes through literally the same order. No fish were caught, throw out on the other side. Peter's like, oh my gosh, and instead of this time, the first time Peter says, Lord, have nothing to do with me, I'm a sinner. This time he's there and Jesus like, do you love me? He's like, Lord, you know. And I hear that, Lord, you know I love you. It's like Peter's realizing, I want a second chance. I'll try to do better. I don't know if Samson ever tried to do better.
Not until the very end. Okay. So I think maybe Samson never had that. I think Samson was the arrogant. He had the confidence level, and he just knew, he felt God's power, and he took it for granted. And he never felt any of the condemnation. And maybe Peter had to be convinced over.
Yeah, maybe too. Peter's hanging out with all those friends going, oh yeah, you're the one that ran your mouth. You said you never leave her. You said you wouldn't do it. You sucker. Right? Right? All right. But like I said, as we wrap up with Samson and Peter here, both stories end up at the end. God's love and grace is still at work, right?
Right.
That God never gives up.
And it's important to look at our own life. Like when we feel, so miserable. And I know in my own situation, with so many times when I have felt, how can I go on? God gives me someone in my life who says, oh, I did it too. Me too. And I see how God has been faithful to them. I have a cousin who lost her husband about 8 years before I lost mine. And she was a role model that God was still working. And the first time I came to take communion, I took it from Pat DeWeese. And I was so blessed because I'm like, here's Pat. She's walking this path before me. God has given me women that I can follow behind, that I'm not alone.
Right. Kind of that's God taking the ashes and turning them into beauty to work in and through.
You have to look for those moments.
Look for those moments where God's pulling you out of the pit.
Right.
So do that this week. Talk about that at your table, about moments that you maybe tell some stories about times that you failed and came out of it. Talk about Samson and Peter and other stories in the Bible.
And maybe how you can be that encourager to someone who is lacking confidence, that they think, I'm just always failing. And you need to give them the grace and help them see that they can give themselves grace. That
and build them up.
It's a momentary failure, that they are not a failure.
Right. Like we said, too often we listen to the voices, you're not good enough, you're not good enough. Maybe we should be a voice pouring into people's lives of how good they are and how proud we are. Everybody needs to hear how proud we are of them. So
because that's God speaking through you.
So those are things to talk about at your table. Next week, this week we talked about times that you screwed up. Next week we'll talk about times when other people screwed up and you paid the price for it.
Mm-hmm.
So join us for that. That'll be episode 19 during COVID-19, so that'll be fun. Anything else, Terry?
Table talk. I'm sorry. This is table talk.
This is table talk.
Taboo
Terry.
talk just happened.
Yeah, we're doing some online stuff, so you can connect with our church online.
If you have not connected with us, we would love to know that you're out there. If you have ideas that you would love to hear us talk about, we'd love to know. And you can do that at our website, firstunited.org.
Right. We're on Facebook.
True, on Facebook.
Right. Social media platforms. Like us on YouTube or iTunes, all that good stuff.
Subscribe, and then you never have to go looking.
You never have to miss an episode again. What more could you ask for? Because guarantee we're going to fail a couple more times, but God is good, and we'll keep going.
That's right.
All right.
All right.
Am I supposed to pray?
Unless you want me to, it might be long.
Okay, I'll pray. God, we give you thanks that our screw-ups don't stay that way, that the resurrection means the worst thing's never the last thing, that you're constantly at work at us. We give you thanks for people like Samson who proved to us we can have everything go completely wrong and make every mistake we can make, and yet you will continually work in us and through us and around us to try to make something good out of our mess. Mm-hmm. So God, take our ashes and turn them into a crown of beauty.
Yes.
Amen.
Amen. Peace out.
Peace out.